MacVoices is supported by ATTO, the power behind the storage. Visit atto.com to learn more. Welcome back to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, there's a bit of a war going on in case you haven't been paying attention, and that's the war for your holiday dollars. It seems like that everybody is trying to push the holiday back farther and farther and farther. And to make sure that you keep your budget straight and know what you're going to spend your money on this year, I wanted to have Mike Potter, the organizer of Macstock, on to make sure you know that there is something special coming on Cyber Monday from Macstock. Mike, great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Chuck. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, you're right. There is this ever-increasing push to start the holidays earlier every year. But I promise, this sale, this special sale on Macstock tickets won't happen until December.
Won't happen until December or Cyber Monday?
Well, that's December 2nd.
Oh, it is. You're right.
It is.
Right.
It's late this year.
Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh boy.
So I can solemnly swear it won't happen until December.
Okay. Well, but we need to still let people know now so they can budget and make sure
absolutely.
that they put this on their calendar for Cyber Monday because everybody's out cybering all over the place. And,
they are. They're out cybering.
Yeah, yes. Whatever that means. Yeah. So before we get to that, though, I do think it's appropriate to talk a little bit about last year's, or I guess technically this year's Macstock, 2019 Macstock.
Yeah.
And the Macstock virtual ticket, where folks can, if they didn't get to Macstock, they can still enjoy and benefit from some of the presentations that were achieved there.
Yeah, the digital pass. The digital pass is something that started new in 2018. It was one of those things that was just kind of spur of the moment, really. I mean, I think the 2018 one I kind of put together within just a month or two. No, not even that much. I think just a week or two before Macstock started. And it turned out to be one of those things that it was so popular with attendees because I gave one to everyone who had a weekend pass for Macstock 2018. So it turned out to be so popular for folks to go back, rewatch talks, watch the talks they missed because they were out in the hallway having another conversation, or maybe they were in one deeper dive and they wanted to catch the other deeper dive. Turned out to be so popular that I said, well, we're going to do it again for 2019. But then you can't discount the folks who just can't make it to Macstock for some reason or another. I just attended a conference virtually myself a week ago. And I think it's a great way for folks to capture all these amazing talks that we had and do so from the comfort of their own home.
I mean, what can I say? And as an attendee, I like it because, first of all, there's just no way I can take notes fast enough. And second, sometimes, and if I'm out preparing as a speaker, I miss some of the talks and just because I can't get there. I've got to be one place or the other. And of course, then there's the fact that sometimes with the afternoon sessions, you have two tracks. And all the sessions are so great. I want to attend every one, and I can't be two places at once. So this kind of lets me do that.
That's right. That's right. And I'll have to admit, I get a lot from putting out the digital pass. Actually, you've seen me at Macstock. I'm running around like a chicken with its head cut off here and there, and I get to sit in on a talk for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, but then I have to cut out and I have to go take care of something else. So it was an opportunity for me to sit down and watch the talks myself, absorb them, and actually reach out to some of the speakers. There were a couple in particular where their talk really touched me in a particular way, and I wrote them and said, hey, I really like this part of your talk. I'm actually going to adopt this in my daily life, which has happened. A couple of the talks I've taken some of their hints and tips, and they've now become part of what I do on a daily or weekly basis. So, it benefits me, it benefits you, and I think everyone who's attended, if they haven't, they should go back and rewatch some of these talks that they enjoyed the most, and maybe even some of the ones that they thought, that's not really for me. I think they might sit down and watch the talk and say, yeah, there was something in there for me, and this is an opportunity to do exactly that.
Yeah, I agree. And like I say, and a lot of times you're right. A talk starts out where I think, there's nothing really here for me. And by the end of the talk, it's like, gee, I wish I'd have taken better notes, or I wish I'd have paid more attention when it started
Yeah.
out. So yeah, there's that too. So, and forgive me, I've messed it up. It's the digital pass is the correct
Oh, the digital pass. What do
digital
we
pass.
call it? The virtual
I
ticket?
call it a virtual ticket, but
Virtual
digital
ticket,
pass.
digital pass, it's all the same.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because one of the questions I got from attendees quite a lot this year is, can I still get the 2018 digital pass? And at the moment, when they were asking me at Macstock, I said, no, that's actually been pulled down. There isn't a way to do that anymore. Of course, if you had the 2018 digital pass, you could go back and still watch those videos, but there wasn't a way to purchase it if you missed the opportunity in the first place. So I actually turned around and I made the 2018 digital pass available again too. And I think I'm going to just continue that. As we move forward, next year we'll have the 2020 pass, and of course the 2019 and 2018 will still be available too for anyone who wants to catch those talks.
And let's be real clear about that. Somebody's going to say, well, gee, why would I want the 2018? This is now 2019 headed to 2020. But a lot of the stuff is pretty much evergreen. And even for those things that might not be evergreen, there's still some really good information, some good basic information that will get you up and running on the topics that the individual speakers covered, whatever they happen to be. So, yeah, some of it potentially could get a little dated, but I think anybody would be surprised at just how well it holds up for how long.
I think that's one of the nice things about Macstock is when I challenge the speakers with their theme for the year, which is now going into its third year where we have a theme for Macstock. When I challenge them with that theme, I think it really gets them to sit down and think really hard about what it is they want to present, but to present it in a way that gives it that timelessness so that it has some legs and people can go back and they can listen to it again in 6 months or a year or even 2 years and still get something out of it, just like you said. And that's one thing I'm very proud of that these speakers are doing is taking the time and making the effort to present a talk that's useful to as many folks in the audience as possible.
Yeah. So the digital pass is available. What kind of pricing is there, and how are you pricing? Are you keeping the prices the same for past years, or how are you doing that?
I am, yeah. The digital pass is $79. $79 seems to be the price point that works for most people. They're getting all the content from the weekend. They're getting all the deeper dives for 2019, actually. And I'm actually going back and working on some of the 2018 ones and getting the deeper dives I hadn't put up before up. They're not there yet, but I'm working on that, especially from the breakout room. The main stage deeper dives are all out there, but I'm actually making some effort for 2020 to improve the audio for that breakout room, because that's one of the difficulties that I've had in that room and why I never wanted to promise that those deeper dives would be available in the digital pass, because audio is super important. Video we can kind of forgive some breakup or pixelization or whatnot, but you need good audio. And that was one thing that's always been difficult for me is to get good audio in that room. So I'm actually making an investment for 2020 to improve that audio so that I can promise those breakout room deeper dive sessions will be up just as quickly as the main stage ones.
And none of that should surprise anyone, because this is what Macstock has done since the day one. It has iterated. It has tried to improve areas that might be a little weak. Next year they get a little stronger, and next year they get stronger still. I know you're taking some of the money that comes from Macstock, and you're putting it right back into the conference. And so,
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's great.
Yeah, that's really what I do with it. Is I make a big investment in Macstock for the next year, just to make it hopefully bigger and better than the year before.
Okay, so let's talk about the Cyber Monday sale, because this is something that anybody who's been to Macstock is going to want to put on their calendar. And if you're even thinking about going to Macstock, this is something you want to put it on your on your calendar.
Yeah, Cyber Monday, like I said, is December 2nd this year. Much later than I thought. Interestingly, my calendar on my Mac says uh, they have Black Friday on the calendar in the holiday section, which actually kind of surprised me. I never really considered that to be an official holiday. It's there, but Cyber Monday's not. So I think we have to petition the makers of these shared calendars to put Cyber Monday, and better yet, the Macstock Cyber Monday sale on the annual events there. But yeah, it's going to be in December 2nd this year. And it's going to be the second year we've done this. Last year was the first time I gave it a shot. I didn't know how it was going to work, and people seemed to be very receptive to it. So I figured, let's just do it again for 2020. And this is specifically a Cyber Monday sale on the 2-day weekend pass. There are single day passes available, which some folks buy. I would say the majority of people who come to Macstock have that 2-day weekend pass because it really is the best deal. But that's what the Cyber Monday sale is going to be on, and it's going to be $100 off that 2-day weekend pass, and it's going to be for one day only, December 2nd. And quite honestly, there isn't going to be a better price on those tickets anytime before Macstock other than Cyber Monday.
So let's be real fair to everybody here. It's $100 off on that day. The only thing we know, though, about Macstock 2020 is the date or dates, and the fact
Yes.
that the theme is play. And that's just
right.
That's the nature of doing this like 6-7 months out ahead of
Right.
time. So,
Right.
but on the other hand, Macstock is an established property now, and if you haven't heard it here, then you haven't been paying attention to MacVoices about how much fun we have and how great the presentations are, and what just an all around terrific weekend it is.
They are really fantastic presentations. And every year I try to bring a mix of presenters, both old and new, to the stage. So we have reduced the number of presenters, but we've also given the presenters more time to give their presentations. So what I try to do every year is bring in some of the old favorites, and then bring in some new voices, new faces that maybe people haven't heard or have never met before. Whether a lot of people feel like they've met the presenters through their podcasts or through their YouTube channels or things like that. But I like to bring a couple faces in who don't necessarily have a podcast, don't necessarily have a YouTube channel, aren't necessarily out there in the public eye day after day after day, but are doing some really cool things on the platforms. So that's my goal for 2020, is to be a little bit more inclusive, if you will, and bring in some fresh faces and voices that we haven't had before on the stage.
And you've done a great job each year with that, because you do have new faces up there. And you have the unusual events, like the film premieres and the,
Right.
the film contests and everything. And I think it's great that Macstock, has not gotten frozen in any one thing. You just sort of keep tweaking it, not exactly fully reinventing it, but just improving and altering it so that it's not just the same thing. Because it'd be real easy to do that, and then that's pretty much going to get stale pretty quick.
We've had some sort of different special presentation almost every year, I think. A couple of years ago, we had Bob Levitas. We had him as a featured keynote speaker. Last year, this year, we had the Mac Power Users, episode 500, recorded live on stage. For as many years as I can remember now, we've had the My Mac Game Show. Last year we had the Short Film Fest for the first time with Wally Truinski, and as near as I know, the plans are to bring it back again for next year. So yeah, we do bring that mix of old and new in the presentations too. And I think, again, giving the speakers a theme allows them to kind of bring a little focus to the presentations that we didn't, for good or bad, we didn't have the first couple of years. And then once we started bringing the theme in, whether it was productivity or it was create or now it's play, again, it's just a way for me to challenge people to think a little differently.
Yeah. So Cyber Monday, mark your calendars, folks. Macstock, what is it? Macstock Conference and Expo.com.
Macstock Conference and Expo.com. So I'm not ready to announce the Cyber Monday link yet. That's going out in the newsletter.
Okay.
But if people watch our Twitter channel or our Twitter feed, which is at Macstock Expo, or if they go to Macstock Conference and Expo.com and sign up for the newsletter, that's where you're going to find out about the Cyber Monday sale, and you're going to get that special link to save the $100. So do make sure you sign up for the newsletter. Even if you're not quite sure you're going to participate in the Cyber Monday sale, sign up for it anyway, because when the early bird sale starts up in January or February, at least you'll get the opportunity to get the discounted tickets then, even if it's not quite as good of a sale as Cyber Monday.
Right. Great. Mike, thank you. Thank you for letting us help you get the word out here, because you know how much I think of Macstock, and I think all the MacVoices listeners who have attended Macstock or checked out any of the digital pass know what a great event it is.
I have one more addition, which I realized.
Oh,
we need to mention this. I'm really bad at doing this, and I know I've done this on your show before. We have to give people the dates. If you're going to plan for Macstock 2020, we should probably give you the dates of it. So yes, the Cyber Monday sale is December 2nd. Please, if you're interested, if you've been to Macstock before, if you'd like to come again, or if you're new to Macstock, this is really the best time to save on those 2-day weekend passes. But you need to know what weekend we're talking about. And that weekend is July 25th and 26th, 2020. That's when Macstock 2020 will be held.
This edition of MacVoices is supported by ATTO Technology, the power behind the storage. For more than 30 years, ATTO Technology has been providing network and storage connectivity for Mac users. They offer the most connectivity choices for Mac OS, with a wide range of Thunderbolt and host bus adapters for high performance and low latency networked storage connectivity. No matter which Mac you use, ATTO can be trusted to provide the latest drivers and tools to meet your needs. They work with partners to deliver end-to-end solutions to better store, manage, and deliver data, your data. Network adapters, storage controllers, and more for connectivity that include Fibre Channel, SAS, SATA, iSCSI, Ethernet, and yes, Thunderbolt, are all part of what ATTO brings to the table. I've had several fans of MacVoices write me to tell me that they are using and are very, very happy with ATTO products, and they're glad to see ATTO sponsoring MacVoices. And I am too. Are you one of them? Let me know. And if you're not yet, then visit atto.com and see what they can do for you. ATTO, the power behind the storage at atto.com. That's ATTO.com. Thanks to ATTO for their support of MacVoices.
so I warned you about this, that if we came on and did this, I also wanted to do one of my 5 question shows with you, because I think that,
Yes.
we talked to you about Macstock, and that's pretty much all we get you on for. I'm trying to do better with that, but it doesn't always happen. So I wanted to just dig into the brain of Mike Potter a little and let folks know what's going on in there. What do you think?
Wow. Well, you can certainly give it a yeoman's effort. I don't know if you're going to find anything useful in there, but please.
All right. Well, as many of the listeners and viewers know, I mean, my first question kind of always is, or at least one or two of the questions are always about the tools you use.
Oh,
So you're a Macstock organizer, and that means
yes,
that you have a whole lot of things to try to keep track of.
right.
So what is your methodology for keeping track of it? Do you have a project management program? Do you use a calendar or reminders or schedulers, or what are your tools of organization for Macstock?
Wow. Wow. That's a loaded question. And it really does get into the recesses of this creaky old mind of mine. I don't use a project management tool. I probably should. That's one of the things that I have learned from some of the presenters at Macstock, notably David Sparks, but also several others like Mike Schmitz is another one who's big on this. I probably should do that and be a little bit more organized, but I'm quite frankly not quite that organized with it. Um, uh, Honestly, some of it's kept in a binder. Um, that's that was super important the first couple of years as I was still trying to get my feet wet with Macstock, trying to keep everything organized. A lot of it is kept in number spreadsheets. Some of those spreadsheets are printed where I can take notes on them and then transfer those notes to the digital spreadsheet later. But that's where a lot of it is kept. And then the rest of it, the rest of the organization of what makes up Macstock for the year has been refined into. I know this is going to sound horrible to people who live by project management software, but um, kept in a series of folders in Dropbox, actually, uh, where I've created a system for every year that I can bring forward from one year to the next, where I keep the logos, where I keep the promotional information, where I keep the speaker information, where I keep attendee information, and then where I kind of keep general promotional information and things like that. I have this system that I come up with. Um, for good or bad, I'm not using tags in the Finder. I'm using good old fashioned Finder folders and good old fashioned, Finder hierarchy um, that has become so ingrained to me that I know exactly where to go in the 2020 folder or the 2019 folder to get to that bit of information that I need. Um, but a lot of the attendee information, a lot of the speaker information actually comes through the website. So when someone is submitting a talk, that actually gets collected on the website, and then I can export that into a spreadsheet. Initially, a comma separated value file, but then it gets transferred into numbers more often than not. And the reason I use numbers is because numbers makes it so incredibly easy to rearrange stuff. You can rearrange rows and you can rearrange columns so much quicker than you can in something like Excel, because you can literally drag and drop a row or a column around. And I haven't come across any other spreadsheet that allows you to do that. They all require you to cut, insert, all that stuff. You just drag and drop with numbers. I love that. And it's something where if I need to, I can still apply formulas to those cells and columns and rows if I have to do any calculations or things like that. But everything that gets collected through the website, whether it's attendee information or whether it's speaker information or presentation proposals, all gets pulled out and put into spreadsheet files separated by the type of information that it is. And then a lot of that is honed, or when it comes to Macstock weekend itself, that makes it very easy for my volunteers who are at the registration desk or who are helping the speakers. I eliminate all the information that is of no interest or no use to them and give them just that core bit that they need, the minimum information that they need to get people checked in efficiently, get them their swag, get them their badges, T-shirts, things like that. And then likewise, Brian, volunteer extraordinaire, who helps all the speakers get ready for their presentations, gets the information that he needs to prep for that and for the weekend. So really, these 2 or 3 spreadsheets that I have all the information in is most of what I work off of.
I think that's great, and that's exactly why I ask these questions. I'm afraid that we all can get ourselves a little tied up in, all the software solutions and all the things that maybe, they might have some advantages, but one advantage that you have is you build it from the ground up, so you know where everything is, and you know how to use it.
I do. I pity anyone who tries to follow in my footsteps, but this is the system that works for me. Now, that said, I do use Notes. I use Apple Notes, and I do use Apple Reminders. I'm not sure where I will be with Reminders next year because of this change in file format that it's gone through with iOS 13 and Catalina, because some of my Macs can't or won't be upgraded to Catalina. So that means I'm either going to need to find a new reminder system or just make sure I never ever click that upgrade now button in iOS or on my Catalina Macs. So, I'm not sure where that will be, but honestly, I don't rely on reminders quite as much as I do on Notes or on those spreadsheets. So, for example, my opening talk notes, those are all in Notes. My opening talk notes are in Notes. That's where I start compiling my thoughts, and that's generally where I keep them in various stages of my thought processes. I keep them in Notes, and then I take the bits that I want to use ultimately and put them together into the final presentation. So I do keep a lot of stuff in there, and similar to my file folder structure, I do have a Macstock 2018, a Macstock 2019, and a Macstock 2020 folder within Notes. So that's kind of where I keep everything in there too. And I actually just this week I was moving stuff from 2019, or copying stuff, I should say, from 2019 that I know I'm going to use for 2020 into the 2020 folder, both in the Finder and in Notes. So yeah, kind of hodgepodge, kind of, like you said, how does this brain work? Well, that's how my brain works, and in some ways, it's a little old-fashioned, but it's how I keep things organized. Now, where will I be next year? I don't know, but this has been working pretty well so far.
Well, and the other thing too is that I'm sure your system has evolved because year one of Macstock was one thing, and now what is this, year 6 we're coming up with?
This will be year 6. Yeah, it's interesting because when I do go back to look for something that I know exists, and I can't necessarily find it in Spotlight for whatever reason, I'll go into those old 2015, 2016 folders before I had this kind of, I don't want to say rigid structure, but before I had this structure I've settled upon. I go back into those 2015 and 2016. I can't find a darn thing because it lacks this organization that I've come to adopt. And so it's a combination of going into that folder, using search in the Finder, sometimes using Spotlight, and sometimes just pure luck to find that little bit that this is where I should use tags, honestly. But yeah, to find that little bit that I know is in there, I'm just not quite sure where, because I wasn't using this structure that I'm using now. So yeah, as Macstock has grown, I've had to adopt new ways to stay on top of everything, and I'm sure I'll continue to adopt new ways, possibly even a project management app, as time goes on.
Yeah. Okay, so second question also relates to Macstock.
Are we only on the second question?
We're only on the second question. Yeah, those were all follow-up questions. Um, we neglected to say about the digital pass how many hours of video it comprises.
Oh gosh.
But that's not the question. The question is, you have to process a lot of audio and video. You process it from the main stage. You process it from the breakout sessions. What are your tools of choice there? What's your video software?
Oh, Final Cut Pro.
Well, okay,
is what I use. I don't really use anything different. Once in a while, when the audio is particularly bad, I've actually exported the audio only from the video, brought it into Audacity, cleaned it up a little bit, and then brought it back into Final Cut Pro and matched it up to the video, which is usually pretty easy. I mean, there's not a whole lot of matching up to do if you're exporting just the audio. You're not modifying the length of it or anything. You're just cleaning it up and then bringing it back in. It's pretty much a one-to-one import. But I have had situations where I've had to snip or adjust or clean up the audio and bring in just a portion of it. And that's where I love Audacity and Final Cut Pro, because Audacity has these, if you haven't used it, and I know GarageBand has them, but I find the waveform structure of Audacity to be, it's going to sound weird to say, much easier to understand. It's very visual, right? And a waveform is visual, but it's, after all these years of podcasting, all these years of using Audacity, it's almost like another language to me. I can look at it and I can see the ums and I can see the pops and the clicks, and I can see, well, that helps me in editing the video of Macstock as well, because I recognize those waveforms. I can match them up to the waveforms in Final Cut. And the zoom tools are so great on Final Cut too, that I can get in very granularly and make sure that it's lined up perfectly. There are tools to do it in Final Cut, but I found that sometimes I just have to do it manually. And that's where lining it up with the waveforms helps a lot. And sometimes you just use editing tricks like sticking a different piece of video on top of it or whatnot. But I try not to do that if at all possible.
Yeah, interesting. I have to admit, the selection of Audacity surprises me. I'm not quite sure why, but it does. But again, if it works,
I've used Audacity since 2005. I mean, it's just one of those things. I know all the keystrokes in my head that I need to use as I'm editing my podcast, and it's my go-to audio editing app. So I'm very happy that it's 64-bit.
Okay, good. So let's step away from Macstock. What does what services, music services, do you use, and what do you listen to them on?
I don't use a music service.
Ah, really?
I don't. No, I don't use any music services. Every once in a while, I might turn on Pandora or something like that. But quite honestly, if there's something I want to listen to, it's more than likely in iTunes. I've ripped the CD. It's in there, and that's where I find it, and that's where I listen to it. About the only once in a while I'll play music on my iMac at the office, but rarely. If I'm going to listen to anything at the office, it might be a podcast that's kind of playing in the background or something like that. If I'm going to listen to music, it's almost always on my Mac Pro that's sitting here to my right, and that's my entire collection of music is on there. Music and podcasts. You know, once in a while I'll throw on a particularly long episode of a podcast or something and just kind of let it play in the background. But yeah, my entire collection of music that I care to listen to. I have a very large collection of music, but the collection that I tend to turn to the most is on there. So yeah, I don't have to subscribe to a music service, because that's what I already have it. I already have what I want to hear. It's there. So I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah, well, you're not really out there exploring or looking for new music. You're happy with what the collection you've amassed.
Often when I get new music, well, one, I don't trust Pandora or Spotify to present new music to me that I'm going to enjoy. Um, I, I listen to a lot of classic rock. I listen to progressive rock specifically. I listen to a lot of older rock and roll, Beatles, Elvis, Fats Domino, Bill Haley, things like that. I listen to a lot of that. I listen to a lot of soundtracks. Um, we'll stay in the nerd zone here, the Star Wars soundtracks and, things like that. Um, but I also listen to a lot of current or top 40 or pop music as well. So that if I'm buying something, there's not a whole lot new that's coming out from Genesis. So if I'm going to listen to Genesis or the Cars or anything from the 80s, of course I listened to a lot of 80s, which was what was current when I was in college. That's what we always turn to, right? Um, but if I'm going to uh, listen to that, I probably already own it. So the most of the new music I purchase is what I'd call current or top hits or things like that. And I'm a little old fashioned in that I typically don't buy a single track. If I like an artist well enough that I enjoy their first or second or even sometimes third track that they've released, I'll buy their album. And I'll usually discover that I like pretty much everything on that album. Um, it's like anything. If I go back to, um, I remember buying Invisible Touch, Genesis Invisible Touch. I remember buying that, and not really enjoying, I'd say maybe about half the tracks on there. In fact, I'll tell you in particular, I didn't like Throwing It All Away. Everyone loves Throwing It All Away now, but it's like, yeah, it didn't resonate with me when I heard it. And it was one of those tracks where I could skip it every time and not feel bad about it. But it's one of those songs that's grown on me as music does. And I've of course come to love every track that's on that album. Or Calling All Stations, where Phil Collins left and we had Ray Wilson come in. I thought Ray Wilson was a phenomenal replacement for Phil Collins. Again, I'm showing my progressive rock roots here, but because Ray Wilson could perform the old Peter Gabriel stuff and the Phil Collins stuff and the new stuff with equal aplomb. So I really loved that they brought him in, that they brought someone young in, that they brought someone with new ideas in. I didn't love so much that they fired him after one album because I really enjoyed Ray Wilson, and I've actually since purchased almost all of his new albums that he's released on his own. I think he's a fantastic musician and songwriter in his own right, and if someone's interested in progressive and Genesis in particular, I'd say pick up a Ray Wilson album, and I think you'll probably enjoy it.
Okay, interesting. So I'm learning a lot about you. This is good. So, all right. So if you don't listen to music that much, although
I
it sounds
listen
like
to
you
music all the time. I don't.
Okay,
I don't necessarily go out of my way to seek new stuff, unless it's like I said, the current hits. I actually like a lot of the stuff that Pink puts out. I think she does a great job, and I really like her latest album. I think it's her best one yet. So my musical tastes are varied, and sometimes I'll just hear something on the radio or someone else will be playing it, and I'll just, well, what's that? And I'll explore that artist a little bit more. but I don't necessarily trust Pandora or Spotify to present new stuff to me, because it seems as if every time I tune them in, I'm just hearing the stuff I already own.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to take it the other direction then. What video services do you subscribe to?
Oh, lots of video services.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Yeah. So I do not subscribe to Apple TV Plus. I hadn't really seen anything that made me want to go subscribe to it. There's a couple shows on it where I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting, but not quite enough. So I'll just get that out of the way up front. I have not subscribed to that yet. I may yet, but I have not. Hulu, we watch a lot of Hulu. In fact, I subscribe to Hulu Live. That's how I get all my network TV, if you will, is through Hulu. That's where we watch all of our soccer games, is through Hulu. So we subscribe to that, and we subscribe to that, and right off the bat are saving 50% off what we were paying for satellite service before that. So that was a huge savings, and yet we're getting all the content we got before and then some. So I really, that's probably the service we watch the most. Now I do have Amazon Prime. Watch a few things on there, not a whole lot. There are a couple shows on there that we watched and enjoyed. I'm trying to remember the name of it that just aired. Oh darn it, the show about superheroes.
Oh, The Boys.
The Boys. Oh, I love The Boys. That was an awesome show. I can't wait for the next season to come. But it's the odd show that we'll watch on Amazon Prime. We did subscribe for the first time ever. I'll say I did used to subscribe to Netflix when it was a DVD service. I think actually it might still be a DVD service as far as I know. But years and years ago, when it first came out, we subscribed to Netflix, and we actually got those little silver discs in the mail, every once in a while. It was pretty cool. It was an amazing service, and an envelope to return it in, too. But we, for the first time, subscribed to Netflix about 3 months ago. When did Stranger Things, the new season, debut? July? August?
Yeah, something like that.
That's when we subscribed to it. So we watched Stranger Things, and not a whole lot more since then, although I am very interested in the new Dark Crystal series. I have not watched it yet, but that's in my list. I'm going to watch that one for sure. So again, a little bit there, a little bit from Amazon Prime, and then I couldn't pass up the offer to subscribe to Disney Plus. Kind of like Apple's service, though, I'm not seeing a whole lot that is really piquing my interest all that much. Apple has the Snoopy in Space show, which I think is pretty cool looking, and The Mandalorian looks pretty cool on Disney Plus. But the offer was just phenomenal for Disney Plus, because we're Disney geeks, and we're in all these different things. And it was the D23, which is the club for Disney fanatics like me. They had a special offer to get essentially 3 years for the price of 2. So it works out to be just a couple bucks a month. And I was like, well, I fine, subscribe me to it. And so I subscribed to Disney Plus. But that's so we obviously, let's see, that starts tomorrow. This is November 11th. So November 12th is when Disney Plus rolls out. I think it's a little odd how they're not pre-releasing the apps. The apps are only going to be available for Roku and Apple TV and iOS and Android and what have you tomorrow. That's the debut. That's the day the service debuts. Why on earth would they wait and ask I presume millions, hundreds of thousands, let's say hundreds of thousands of people to go download these apps on the day the service hits. We'll see. We'll see how well that works for them. But that's when the apps are supposed to be. So I haven't really had a preview of it or anything. I'll check out Mandalorian. I think that looks kind of cool. But yeah, most of what we watch is on Hulu. I love going through the not the document. There are actually some pretty cool documentaries. There's a lot of junk on there too. There's some pretty cool documentaries on there. But I love going through the movies and just picking something I've never even heard of before and giving it a try. I love that with movies. I don't do that so much with TV shows, but I do that with movies a lot. There is a new TV show on Hulu, though, that we watched the first episode of last night. It's called Zomboat. And I don't know if you've heard, it's a British series. It takes place in Birmingham. And Birmingham, I only watched one episode so far, so forgive me if I get the details wrong. It takes place in Birmingham, and we don't know why yet, but a majority of the population are being turned into zombies and then attacking the other humans and turning them into zombies. And there's two pairs of protagonists in the show who are now on a longboat on the river because they know zombies can't swim, trying to figure out what they're going to do next. It's a half-hour series, and 6 episodes have been released so far, and we're just 1 into it. So I'm kind of, when we're done, we're watching the credits and saying, yeah, now I want to know where that goes. I want to know where this goes. So I do like to give, unlike music, I guess, I do like to give new shows, especially British shows. There's a lot of really good Australian shows as well, and movies a try. And that's what I found Hulu works really, really well for, is to just kind of browse and find something and say, okay, that's an hour and a half. Let's give it a try. And I'll be sitting up late, 2 a.m, finishing up a movie and say, that was really good. Or I'm never going to watch that again.
Yeah, well, we've all had those movies or those TV shows.
And I'll tell you, just to continue this question 3 a little bit longer, 4, that's how I discovered Kevin Smith. But it was in a video store, and we were walking down the aisles, and we saw this movie called Clerks, and it was black and white, and it looked quirky. And we said, let's give it a try. And he has since become one of our favorite writers and directors, to the point where we went out of our way to go watch him live, do one of his an evening with Kevin Smith. So we went to go watch one of those in Crystal Lake here, because we just enjoy what he does so much, and we quote his movies. And it was all because we decided to just give it a try.
Okay, so I've got one question left, and I'm going to fix a mistake I've made with you for quite some time.
Okay.
Because we're always talking about Macstock.
Yes.
But you also do a podcast called For Mac Guys Only.
Do.
You
Yes.
do. So my question is, why did you start For Mac Guys Only?
Oh, that's a good question. So, how much time do we have?
How much do we need?
I started podcasting in 2005. Okay, I'm going to go back a little bit further than that. So, when I graduated college, my degree was in English. Sometimes that's hard to tell, but my degree was in English. And I wanted to do something with that degree. A lot of folks who get a liberal arts degree are like, what do we do? What do we do? And unless you go into teaching, it was back then. Now it's a lot different, but that back then it was traditionally a little harder to find a job in your field. And I wanted to do something with it. So I decided to start a small press literary magazine. So this is early 90s, 91, I think, was when I started that. It was called Escape Magazine, Escape from the keyboard, Escape key. So it combined my love of computers with escapism. It was a dual meaning title. So it was ESC, Escape with an exclamation point, which I still use to this day. My day-to-day business is Escape Technologies Group, and that is the company that I run Macstock through. And I use Escape for a lot of other things too. But I wanted to do something with it, so I started this literary magazine, and that went. That was a quarterly printed magazine. Just remember, 1991, and at some point, it kind of fell by the wayside a little bit. I wasn't able to get it out with the regularity that I wanted to. A lot of this obviously corresponds with changes in career and family and all that kind of stuff. But I did revive it again in 2001, and I made it. Let's see, I think it was a semi-annual at that point. And I moved from having it printed by a traditional printer to publishing it myself and binding it myself. So very much a small press effort. And in 2005, I said, I want to do something to help promote this magazine. So I started a podcast called Coffee House to Go. And that's still out there, coffeehousetogo.com. You can go there and you can listen to the first episode of that, and all 49 episodes that have been released are still out there. I think they're still in iTunes. There is an episode 50. I'm calling it the lost episode, and one of these days I'm actually going to release the episode. But it's out there. My poor co-host is still waiting for that episode to be released. And I started Coffee House to Go, and it was fun. I mean, it was a way to explore the world of the small press, but in a different way. I invited people to come on and read their poetry, or read sections from their short fiction, or read sections from their nonfiction, and you're going to find this really interesting. I brought in what was then called pod safe music. So this new music was being put out there by indie artists. I discovered a lot of great new music then, and I would go to there was a website, PodSafe Audio, and there are a lot of different PodSafe Audio websites, and the artists would put their stuff out there, and you could download it, and you could put it on your shows. And that's what I did. So almost every episode featured at least one or two new tracks. And in my mind, it was the same thing as poetry. Writing a song, writing song lyrics is very much like poetry set to music in my mind. So that's what I was doing with Coffee House to Go. Is I put out new music, poetry, my own thoughts and ideas, or when a new episode of Escape, I almost said Macstock, a new episode of Escape Magazine came out, I would talk about that. And it was a lot of fun. And I kept doing that for a few years, 50 episodes. But then in 2006, I had the idea, I guess it was in the summer of 2006, I had the idea. I always let these things percolate. I had the idea for an Apple-focused podcast. We were starting to put more Macs in the creative agency that I was working. I was the IT manager, and I was trying to bring Macs in there. They were working off of Windows computers, Corel Draw, and even Adobe apps and things like that, which there's a whole story behind it, but that's my fault too. I'm the one who initially brought those into that place. But I was trying to correct my error by bringing more Macs into the creative department of that ad agency. And I was learning very rapidly more about the Mac than I ever knew as a casual user. And I thought, well, I should share this information with people. I should put this out there. I don't think there's enough of this done these days. I don't think there's enough knowledge sharing done out there these days. I think more people need to do this. I said, I'm learning stuff about this that I didn't know before. I'm going to put this out there. So the first episode or two, I adopted a very traditional format. Okay, I stole Adam Christensen's format. News, Q&A. I wanted to do something a little bit different. So again, I kind of brought in my own personality, and I started every episode with an editorial. And this is something I would spend a lot of time on. I'd think about what's going on in the Mac world, what I wanted to talk about, what flipped my trigger in a particular way, good or bad. And I would spend the first 10, 15 minutes of the episode talking about that. And then I would move into the news. And then I met a really good friend, Gary Malpas. People know him as Gazmaz. We traded emails, and I said, hey, why don't you come on the show? So we created a segment for him called News and Views from Across the Pond, brought him on with regularity. And then I had the Q&A section. That was kind of what started the whole thing, was the Q&A section. And the first few episodes of, this is more you want than you want to know, isn't it? First few episodes, the Q&A were actually my own Qs and the A's to those Qs. And as people started listening and started writing in, I could bring listener questions in, and it started. Some of my best friends in the world, Gary being one of them, Eric being another, Dave Ginsburg actually came on my show and did segments. Barry Folk came on the show and did segments. These are people who just reach out to me as listeners and say, hey, I'm doing this, and we'll come do a segment. And that's kind of how this all goes back to Escape Magazine. Escape Magazine wasn't about me. It wasn't a vanity press. It was about getting other people published. And then Coffee House to Go is about getting other people out there in the podcast. And For Mac Guys Only became about getting other people onto the show and getting other people to participate. And Macstock is the same thing. It's about getting other people up on stage and sharing their ideas and their knowledge about the community. So it's all led up to where we are now. And yes, I do still do the podcast, and I'm horribly, terribly late. And I know Nick, one of my listeners, is going to see this episode of Mac Voices, and he's going to say, yeah, where's your next episode, Mike? But part of it is that For Mac Guys Only has, in a way, more and more now, 5 years into it, kind of morphed into Macstock. Macstock wouldn't even exist if it weren't for Mac Guys Only. And Macstock was intended originally, when I had the idea in 2009, 3 years after starting the podcast, it was intended to be simply a meetup of Guys Only listeners. That's all it was supposed to be. And it's grown into so much more, and it's only grown into what it's become because of For Mac Guys Only. Did I even answer your question and all that?
Yeah, you did, and I had no idea that there was a predecessor to For Mac Guys Only, and certainly I didn't know that it went back to a magazine. So, that's such an interesting path, as opposed to a lot of the, I guess, paths I would call it that many of us podcasters took to start our shows. So
in fact, there was another predecessor. You reminded me, there was another predecessor to For Mac Guys Only that you might be able to relate to. I called it Across the Mic. And it was a spin-off of Coffee House to Go, but it was an interview show. And it was my opportunity to sit down with one particular person and just talk to them for an hour or longer or less. But it was specifically, because it was a spinoff of Coffee House to Go, a literary focused conversation. But again, I met some really amazing people that way. And as I know you do too, through MacVoices. So yeah, there were actually 2 podcasts that preceded For Mac Guys Only, and actually were produced alongside For Mac Guys Only for a couple years.
Yeah. I am so glad I've ended with that question, because that's a whole history that I did not know about, and I would venture to. I know that the MacVoices and Macstock people don't know, and I would venture to guess that there are a lot of For Mac Guys Only viewers and listeners who had no idea about all that history.
Yep, yeah, quite likely, and that's hey, that's on me, right? I mean, I've always been someone, as I indicated a little while ago, to toot your horn. I've not necessarily always been someone to toot my own horn, right? And I love, this even goes back to college. We don't have another half hour, but this even goes back to college, where I spent a lot of my time in school working on other people's projects to help them advance in their classes or whatnot. It's just something I've always done, and as I think about it, it's something that my dad always does too. They're always about he's always about helping others achieve their goals, and I like to do that. It's fun, and again, all these things, as I think about it, Escape Magazine, Coffee House to Go, and Across the Mic, and For Mac Guys Only, and I guess the editorial for Mac Guys Only was a little bit about my own horn, but Gary's News and Views from Across the Pond, and getting Barry Folk on as the roving reporter, and all that. It's just all about getting someone else started. I love doing that.
Well, I think we share that, Mike. The idea of meeting people and meeting great people, and trying to, I guess, share is the best way. Share why they're such great people. I mean, that's what I love about MacVoices. That's kind of how we met. You were doing this thing, and it's like, man, I want people to know, what a great thing you're doing. And it's a little embarrassing that it's taken this long after 5 Macstocks heading into 6 that we even are starting to get into some of this history. That I know you as the Macstock guy, and I also knew you a little bit before. As For Mac Guys Only, I had no idea about all the background. So we gotta get you more time on the couch here to tell us more.
Yeah, or maybe you on my couch. Maybe we could do that.
Well, we might do that too. We'll have to see.
Virtually,
yes, virtually. Yeah. Hey, Mike,
you're
thank you.
Welcome to sleep on the couch when you're in town, But
well, I appreciate that. Thank you. But thank you for the time and for sharing all that. That really is, it's good background, and I like the idea of giving people a chance to know you a little bit better. They see you on stage at Macstock, and they know you organize it, and you're here frequently, and now they know a little more about you.
Yeah, I have fun doing it, and Macstock is. Like I said, it's the culmination of all these things I've done through all these years, and I just enjoy doing it so much, and I can't imagine ever bringing it to an end.
And isn't it funny how you can look back and the road seems so clear as to how you got here, but at the time it's like you had no idea where any of it was taking you.
No idea, but I'm glad to be here.
Well, we'll get you back again, as of course, a little bit closer to the time as we kick off the road to Macstock. And definitely, folks, definitely check out the Cyber Monday Sale for Macstock, and get ready to join a lot of us in Woodstock, Illinois, in July for another great time.
Oh, I am looking so forward to it. It's going to be a blast.
It is. So we'll talk to you next time, Mike. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Chuck.
Folks, this is MacVoices. I'm Chuck Joyner. I can't stress enough. You've heard me say it so often. Please check out Mike's Black Friday sale, because Macstock 2020 is going to be a whole lot of fun. We want you there. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.